its owners and/or associates.
Lisa and Robin are two fun friends diving deep into conversations where nothing is taboo. They believe in eating dessert before dinner and wearing the bikini. They're allergic to labels, authority, and cheap shoes. Currently, they're launching themselves through life being the good time, bold enough to take risks and inquisitively asking, what's next? They hail from New Hampshire, but they could be anywhere dressed in cute clothes. If they had to share a tombstone, it would read, "Curiosity killed these cats." Your hosts, Lisa and Robin on the mic.
Welcome to Lisa and Robin on the mic. You are listening on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. You can watch, stream, and listen on WSMN.live as well as YouTube. And we are always up on Spotify. Good morning.
Good morning. We might be able to go soon live on LinkedIn too.
Oh, nice.
I
Very
think
exciting.
I think I need like 6 more followers or something like that.
Nice.
We'll be able to get ready up and going.
I'll get Rob and Val to follow you.
Yes. I think
I
actually no. I think I might be following Rob on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I think he came up as like, hey.
Do you know this guy?
I think it was because, or maybe it was Instagram that he did that. It was one of them.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure.
I have a question for you. So,
okay.
As a non-parent,
okay,
as a childless spinster.
I wouldn't say that.
I'm definitely not a spinster, but I'm totally childless. I'm aunt-only material. So I don't get the newness when new things are trending and they hit me. I'm like, what is that? Because I haven't had younger people who are already involved in it. So I usually have to ask my in-laws because they're a decade younger, or I have to go to someone's kid and say, okay, what's going on? Do you know what a zaddy is?
No.
Oh, man.
I don't know what a zaddy is. Do I need to look it up and help you? Or do you already know it?
I don't know. So what happened was someone was doing something and their podcast thing was zaddies. And I'm like, is that a shoe? That's Zappos. And then I thought, oh, lingo is always changing. And I'm guessing it's like sugar daddy. But they don't call it sugar daddy anymore because there's 2 words. So they have to concatenate the words.
It's a slang term generally used to describe an attractive, stylish, confident man. One who's often older.
Okay.
It's the evolution of the word daddy. It's more modern, flirtatious.
Okay. What is a female version of that? What's a female zaddy?
I don't know. A man with swag who's attractive and fashionable.
So, because sugar daddy could be ugly, but rich.
Well,
so there's
cougar.
the attractive feature.
Cougar.
Okay. Cougar's the female version of that?
That would be my guess.
Okay.
Cougar.
So they haven't changed cougar, because that's been around for I feel like
how do I ask
decade.
Siri that?
Well, I thought you would actually just have the kid skinny, because I thought your kid's generation was using it. Is it in a song?
Well, but the thing is, my kids are they're just not normal that same way.
Yes.
Like, they're going to just do what they do. If anybody, I could hear it, it would be Jonah and his crowd. Mm-hmm. Kayla's, they're
and he's probably not interested in zaddies. So,
right.
So he's not going to have that whole thing.
But so their whole group, both of their groups, like even then, they never really followed the trend. Mm-hmm. Like there were certain words that they always picked up. Gosh, now you asked me. I have to think about it. But triggered was one. Mm-hmm. For us, boomers. Mm-hmm. They would always say boomers for us.
But we're not boomers.
Right.
We're not old enough to be boomers. We're Gen X.
Yes.
And so Gen X, the boomers came from the boom of the
baby boomers, the 60s, right?
It came from the boom of people coming home from World War II, starting a family, and having children because they just came from war, and that's, they were coming home and making normalcy.
Right.
Right. And they were the war generation who had children. Those children are baby boomers.
Yes.
But that only goes up to the late 60s. After that, it becomes the cusp of Generation X.
Yes.
And the reason why Generation X is distinctly different is a lot of those people came out of war, had tons of children. The baby boomers weren't having tons of children.
Yeah.
And they were very, they had like a lot of the good times. They had good economic booms. They had the growth of the country growing. And so they were very prosperous. And then when the 70s happened, we were in fuel embargoes and
LSD coming out on stamps and envelopes. It's one of the things I remember as a child.
Yeah. So Gen X is a constriction. So we have like half the birth rates of baby boomers. And then millennials, which are the generation after us, they morphed again, and they're almost as big, or if not a little bit bigger than the baby boomer generation in demographics. So Gen X is this little
we
group.
created the millennials. So all of a sudden, whatever our generation decided, like, let's have more kids.
Yes. And we're gonna love our children.
You think it was for welfare? Just kidding.
Maybe.
Well,
welfare was around. Welfare didn't exist before a certain time.
Right.
And a lot of things kind of happened during that generation where divorce became acceptable. Where before if your husband beat you, you still had to stay home with it.
Right.
Because you weren't working and you didn't have a way to separate from that or something.
Yeah, you were stuck.
You were kind of stuck. You didn't have...
But also you had like Catholics and, high number of Catholics that, go do your rotaries and, go do your beads and do your Hail Marys and then... But you're not getting divorced.
Yeah. And one of the things they say about the baby boomer generation for the Gen X generation is they don't want to be babysitters. Like their generation, when they had children, their parents participated. But our generation doesn't have the participation as much of the baby boomers. And now I know there's baby boomers yelling, I'm watching my grandkid right now.
Right.
What are you talking about? I'm talking about like very general stereotypical things because they're the ones who created the bumper sticker that says I'm spending my kid's inheritance. So you're not, don't act like that's not your bumper sticker, right?
Right.
But Gen Xers, like the millennials and the baby boomers need to rely on the Generation X because we were left home alone.
Yeah, latchkey kids.
We were out of a house early. No one knew what we were doing for hours on end. And we're pretty resilient because we always had something wrong going on at the time we were trying to make pivotal points.
Yes.
So, and that's basically a birth rate problem. So when people talk about economics, they're talking about if you're a capitalist society, then the consumerism makes the economy grow more. So when you have a ton of baby boomers, they're spending money in very predictable ways. Our birth rates didn't even have the numbers to spend money that move the needle, and then millennials do the next thing. That's why when people are advertising, they really don't advertise to Generation X often,
right?
Because we're not financially, demographically a big enough group.
That's true.
So yeah,
but now you're in a place where the millennials have a very different mindset and waiting for, wonder what the marriage rates are going to be,
right?
And birth rates are going to be,
right, because they have a whole different lifestyle, and
very different. But now you're even like, hey, I can change my sex. They have Planned Parenthood is like one of the number one distributors for hormone suppression for adolescents, for teenagers, and I'm like. So when you're creating all of these things that you put in place,
that you're letting people who don't have fully developed brains make decisions on.
Right.
That would be like saying, hey, you're 12. Why don't you just tattoo your face?
Right.
You want to.
Yes.
Put dolphins all over it.
Get some gold crowns on the front teeth.
Yeah. Drill out all of the teeth. Put little diamonds in there. Thinking alike.
Well, if you gotta have some gold, you gotta have some sparkle.
Gotta have some bling.
Right.
Bling in my smile.
Cha-ching. Can you imagine? I couldn't do that. Like, some of that stuff you just can't go back from.
Well, I look at other people and I think, I don't even want people drilling my teeth if I have a cavity. I'm not going to be certainly drilling good teeth, but I also don't have a tattoo because I'm not drilling my body. There's like,
right.
You can do whatever you want.
Right.
Again, before 18, you need some kind of guardrails up. I don't think you should be changing. That's why I understand why they thought the need for birth control needed to happen, but I really do believe it should be a parental piece.
Yes.
versus just, you're going whatever and you're getting whatever?
I think a lot of the times we stopped. I think some ways our generation raising kids, we communicated more about certain things, but we didn't really communicate about some of the right things.
Like?
About teaching them who they want to be. And actually creating a space where kids could feel comfortable about talking about sex or things about their body.
I don't think
Changes in their
children
body.
ever feel comfortable talking about their sex to their parent because it's their
I
parent.
wouldn't say that.
Because I feel like as an aunt, I have borne that responsibility because, they're like trying to throw out questions, but you can tell they don't want to talk to their parent, but they need real advice. Like they need a real, what's the real skinny of this? Because I feel like I've had a lot of conversations about like that on that tone. Where they're like, how do you do this?
See,
Or,
so I think that we were good. We were better about communicating in some ways, but we didn't communicate about that, like especially sex, being comfortable.
So our moms didn't put us in front of Dr. Ruth? You as a mom, my mom put me in front of Dr. Ruth. And she was talking about all kinds of things.
Chris took Jonah out to lunch and bought him a book. So he bought a book for boys, book for girl. And it was pretty, it's pretty simple, but it was also pretty just point blank in some ways. Even like the desires, the urges that you're going to have for yourself and all these things.
Insert here.
And he's like, talk about weird and awkward. But I knew from the very beginning, I grew up having a lot of questions in my life. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. Chris and I were talking about this last night. It was all hellfire and brimstone. Like you can never do enough you have a bad thought, you're going to go to hell. But hearing that as a kid, he was really like, be careful what you bring into your mind. Even, you can have bad thoughts and, the sin. I had a lot of questions about sin. And I would go to bed and I said to him, I had pink flamingo sheets and I had pink walls and I had a water bed. And I remember laying there just feeling like, am I going to go to hell because I just had a bad thought about somebody? And just not knowing and not having a space to even talk about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And like my parents, they never really set us down and talked about how finances work, about how credit cards work, and about how retirement and saving and how you divide your money and investing and any of these things. So what I thought was funny is my kids, so Jonah had gotten a job down at LaBelle. He was washing dishes and he was 14. And so he could only work with a couple hours during the week, but he really wanted to make money to start saving for his car. So I would drive down and drop him off. And he went in for his interview and he came back and he said, I got the job. And he said, but I have to fill out the paperwork. And he said, how much do I put away towards retirement and how much will they match me? It's a 14-year-old.
Right.
I'm like, sweetheart, they don't do retirement they don't do 401ks for part-time.
For 14-year-old part-timers.
But it was sweet, the fact that, just being able to ask. And Kayla was like, I remember she was 16 and she's like, I don't know. How am I going to know how to pay my bills? How am I going to know how to do credit cards? Like, how am I going to know how to pay, and I'm like, but Kayla, think about the math that you're doing right now. And think about the chemistry that you're doing right now. If we had shown that to you in kindergarten, it would have been overwhelming. Or even in 3rd grade or 5th grade, it would have been overwhelming to you. But as you go along, you get these skills and knowledge. So when you finally are at that point, and I said, but being able to have these questions, this is what you do. This is how you, and I even said to my kids, if you pay your credit card on time, you don't have to worry about what the interest rate's going to be, your APR at the, back end of it. As long as you pay it off by the end of the month, you're not paying that interest on it. So, but you want to get one, you want to look for ones because they're all going to have, an introductory offer, but they're all going to be about the same interest. And she's like, oh, just being able to put the pieces together. And I don't think our generation did a lot of.
We were out, our generation was out of the house at 17.
Yeah.
Or at least all the people that I really resonate with. I joke that, like, what if I had what kind of life would I have had if it wasn't that life?
Right.
Where I think our generation was really pushing off of the previous generation in the opposite direction.
Yes.
I'll just go to you're here, you're north, I'm going south. You're
Yes.
east, I'm going
Yes.
west. Let me just get 180 degrees away from you.
Well, but
And
I
then-
think, but I think if you think each generation
But I
always
think
pushes
your
away.
but your generation doesn't push away the same.
True.
And I think that's because we pushed away so hard. We must have been traumatized by it a little bit. Like, I don't want this kind of
But
relationship with my
I wonder
kids.
how many. I would be curious to see if you put a poll out how many Gen Xers felt like they were left alone, or I
to
don't.
their own devices.
I feel like abandoned is too strong of a word, but I mean, we grew up without staying home by ourselves, figuring out how to cook by ourselves because you're home all day. So
And that brings me to the microwave.
I was gonna say, thank God we had the microwave.
So I have such a hatred of the microwave. And it's because we were a takeout family. My mother went to work and she decided I'm not going to work and being a housewife. So my laundry is getting outsourced, food is getting outsourced. Like, I'm not doing everything.
Right.
Which was so smart. It was so smart. But so we went from the family that was takeout to all of a sudden we had a microwave. Now we're microwaving everything. And
It's still instant food.
I went from the toaster oven, which I mastered.
I love that. I still have. I don't have a toaster. We have a toaster oven.
Okay. So I mastered the toaster oven for my frozen pizzas and various things. And then I went to the microwave, and I remember thinking, this sucks. The food out of this thing sucks. I can't crisp up a pizza.
Well, even if you did Hot Pockets, remember? Because we were like dying to have Hot Pockets because we were like, oh my God, pizza, and you could do it in a microwave and it's going to be crispy. And
It's completely in a pocket.
well, if you overcook it, then the ends get really, really hard and almost like the cheese and the sauce almost crystallizes and like you can't even bite into it. And then the hot in the middle, it's so hot, it'll like just take the skin off.
That's what I never got. I never
Your
got like
mouth.
there was always something that was burning the skin off the roof of my mouth, and then I'd have an ice crystal somewhere.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my parents, like, this sucks. They're like, but it's quick. And I'm like, we don't need this quick if it's terrible.
Yeah.
And everyone was just like, well, we're going to have suckier things now because it's quicker.
Yeah.
So that is my like absolute hatred of the microwave. So then I'm like, I'm going to make my own food. I'm not microwaving anything. I'm an adult. My own apartment. I'm getting a toaster oven again.
People love. There are two types of people: people that live to eat or eat to live. We are live to eat.
Yes. So because of that, I don't want crappy food.
I know.
And I'm going to get into the bikini. It's bikini season.
Yes.
Now, for us, it's bikini season all year because we're always going away somewhere. So there's like not the hot panic of right before. But I was talking to one of my girlfriends, and she was saying that she has a friend who has a pool in her backyard that she's had for over 10 years, and she's never been in the pool because she's embarrassed to wear a bathing suit in her yard.
What?
And I'm like,
how ridiculous?
how ridiculous to be somewhere having a pool in your yard that you've never used because you have this idea that you can't wear a bathing suit in your own four walls or your own fence.
But I'm assuming that it's got to be fenced in.
And even if it's not fenced in, like, what do you care?
Right.
And so then
right.
I was kind of thinking, technically, people would look at me and be like, she shouldn't be in a bikini. But I look terrible in a one piece. I have a long torso.
Yeah, I don't. Look
So there's a
good in
lot of
one piece.
material.
Yeah.
You know, and I like a couple of years ago, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should go into a one piece. Like I was taking the boys to the pool, and I was like, maybe I should just wear a one piece. And then I was like, I look terrible, so I'm just gonna have to look fat in the bikini. Like
No, you look great in the bikini.
So I tell all my whenever someone of my friends tells me how great I look, I'm like, you're not seeing the real me. You're seeing some I love her version of me. Because if you were a stranger, you'd have a different opinion.
I don't know. That's not true. I mean, you do look like. I mean, there's all kinds of there's
Bodies.
all kinds of bodies.
But I
and
think
now you
it's
see everybody type in bikinis on the beach.
And when I think about it, like if someone were to say, oh, but you shouldn't wear a bikini if you're a certain size or if you shouldn't, or a certain age.
Well, yeah,
You're
somebody said to me, shouldn't it be time for you to start wearing one pieces? And I'm like, why?
Right. And I see 80-year-olds in Florida every one of those chicks or ladies
Yes.
is in a bikini, and I want vitamin D. I wanted as much of my body as humanly possible. But I don't look good in a one piece. If I looked good in a one piece, I would have been wearing one at 18.
I remember we saw that beautiful, it was like that cutout lace, that cornflower blue
Yes.
bathing suit. And I just,
We both put it on, and
Yes.
we both looked at each other and we're like, nope,
Nope.
don't wear that.
Take it off. Take it off.
So, because like in my head, if I looked good, I would have been wearing it already, you know?
Yeah.
But I did want to talk about, okay, we're in bathing suit season. We're going to be at the beach, whatever. What do you care what someone else thinks? And I really mean that as, like, do these people impact your life? What is it about, like, I'm trying to think of that woman. What could we tell her so that she would enjoy the pool in her house, at her house? You know, maybe we would have to learn why she was not wearing a bathing
Well,
suit.
the truth of the matter is, like, so we attach, and actually, I wrote this down tonight, last night. Because I was like, oh, this is actually really good to talk about. It's very vulnerable, but it kind of goes to the same thing. I don't know the exact words that would empower her to say, I'm just going to let go. It comes to a point where she has to realize that that person that might see you when they're walking by, or they might catch a glimpse of you, like, they don't think about you the same way. They might have an opinion. They might have an opinion or a thought when they see you, but that's it. They're not going to remember you when they sit down to dinner, or their kids get off the school bus, or they go back to work. It's literally a nanosecond of thought that registers, and that's what's keeping you from living your best life, or just being you.
Well,
being comfortable in your own skin.
And kind of to that point, I think we're not celebrities where someone's plastering us on people, right? And going, oh, look at this one, and
Right.
I can see where the celebrity becomes like your loss of privacy and your loss of anonymity and all of that stuff.
Well, even being like a celebrity, look how many people are scrutinized.
Yes.
What size are her boobs, and did she get a facelift? And
But this
she
is
going
going to be kind of my point.
Yeah.
So you take a celebrity, they're celebrities for a reason. They're usually, attractive human beings. They're given every opportunity to have health coaches and workout trainers and whatever, right? So, and people talk about them negatively. So you can never undo someone talking about you inaccurately.
Right. So well, it's true. It's so cliche. It's always a saying, other people's opinion of me is not my problem. It's not my business.
Yep.
It's none of my business. So what I was going to say is very personal. Is like, so, my dad passed away on June 9th, and we've been communicating with his wife about, like, when's the service, and she hasn't told us. And my sister found out 2 days ago that she just happened to go on and look at the obituary, and found out that he's being cremated, and they're doing a small service of just walking through this. There's a scatter garden or something, so people can go and scatter ashes, and they've, like, made it so you can sit and see the flowers and the water and all that stuff, and it's beautiful. So they were going to do a small ceremony on July 12th, and we're like, wow, that's a really short notice, and she's known about it, and she hasn't. We were both flying. We'd have it's a 13 to 15 hour drive for us, but even the cost of the tickets. But I would think that someone would say, hey, you guys,
Is this
your
good time
girls.
for you?
well, your girls, like, hey, this is your dad. Are you having time? Do you what times would be good for you? Just to even work something out, just to have something like, hey, this could work. So my sister and I were like, she can't get off of work, which is not like she has a hard time getting off of work because she manages a practice, and my mom has hand surgery the day after, and my mom, she's already committed to helping her. And so she and I are talking about not going. And I said to her, I've thought about this a lot. I would be devastated if my kids didn't want to come to my funeral, but it's actually not the funeral that is what would devastate me. It's the relationship where they would feel, because once you're dead, the funeral is for the people.
It's for the living.
Like,
the
well, they
funeral
even
is
said-
for the living.
There was this guy, he's an Irish guy, and he wrote about the reason why the funerals and ceremonies are so important. It's for the people that are left behind, to offering your condolences and saying, I'm sorry for your loss. It's reinforcing that person is gone and helping you to get over it. And I said, so then she brought up some of our aunts and stuff. And, the last time that I talked to my dad's sister was I was in the hospital right after I delivered the kids. And she was, saying, why didn't you call us and let us know? I'm like, well, I have 2 babies in the NICU that weigh, 5 pounds together. And I have a vaginal natural birth and a C-section. So I'm a little bit tied up. But it goes back. So I said to my sister, it's value for value. And she's like, I know, but none of them have reached out. None of them have reached out to us. And I said, it goes back to the same thing that I've been saying for months, value for value. Now, if I make the choice not to go, I said to Chris, I already knew in my gut I probably wasn't going to go, but I didn't have the courage to speak it out loud, to actually speak the words, because I'm a verbal processor.
Sure. Did some of that come from constantly reaching out and not having an answer? So you're like kind of resigning yourself to the fact that I'm not participating in this? Because normally someone passes away and it's, hey, we don't have to do the funeral right away because we're cremating, but what's a time, or we're thinking of doing it in July, which is
Right.
6 weeks away.
Right.
Right. So what difference is if it's 6 weeks or 7 weeks? I mean, what difference does it make?
Right. Well, this is 2 weeks.
No, it's 2 weeks away from now, but
Yeah.
he passed away almost a month ago.
Yes. Yes.
So that's like when you're doing a funeral, the casket, the embalming, that has a short window. We're doing that in the next 3
Right.
to 5 days
Right.
because of embalming.
Right.
It's like a whole different thing. But this is, you can make this a year from now if you wanted.
Well, so how I tie it back into the lady
No,
with
but
the pool. I don't think, no, because
Okay.
I already said a long time ago is, you learn to love people. Part of letting go, my sister and I had to heal some things in getting to the point where I lost my dad, what I know is a dad, a father figure. I lost him a long time ago. We don't have the same relationship. At any point, any person in that family could have reached out to me at any time to have a relationship. There was always the expectation that I'll have a relationship with you if you do all the work. You call, you come visit, you do this, you do that.
And do they think it's because they were the elders? And so that there's supposed to be some amount of respect towards
they
the
have
elders?
that mindset. They have that mindset. But I also feel like if you're the patriarch or you're the, if you're the head figure of a family, don't you have a sense of responsibility or a duty to, when they say it takes a community to raise a child? My son is the only grandchild. He's the only one that has
Grandson
that can push that bloodline forward.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad always wanted a grandson. The last time he saw him was when he was 8.
Mm.
And he saw him once before that when he was 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you guys are so I said the only reason why, so she asked me, like, what do you want to do? And I said, can you just give me,
your sister?
my sister. She's like, can you give me a little bit of, I said, can you just give me a little bit of time? Even though I already knew in my gut. I was working through guilt and shame of feeling like, wow, I'm guilty. I feel guilty for not going, and shame for not showing up and being better. But then I'm like, if I just sat in that and think about, well, why do you feel that? It was because these people that I would see at the funeral would make me feel like, where have you been? And blah, 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 blah. I'm not here to answer your questions because I could ask you the same thing. Where have you been in my life?
Mm-hmm.
Where have you been an influence, an impact, like
Or when I needed help, or when I
a
needed you, or
safety
a
net,
voice.
or just, yes.
Someone to lean on, someone to run something by.
So I said to my sister, there's no guilt and shame. Like the only guilt and shame that would come from is if we're open to receive it, for the criticism, the judgments from family members. And I still feel like there's a little part of me is like, I don't want someone to think bad about me. But the truth of the matter is, I think if they heard my heart, they wouldn't think bad about me. I laid my relationship down with my dad a long time ago, and I loved the man that he was for where he was and who he was, and being able to let go and forgive and saying that, you know what, maybe that's the best he had.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the best he had, and I don't feel like I need to physically go down and be present with people that I've already put to bed.
Mm-hmm.
He's already gone. His essence is already gone.
Yeah.
So it's what I choose. So it's the guilt and the shame. Nobody can put that on me anymore. I'm an adult. Like as a kid, you always guilt and shamed into doing the right thing or behaving. But we're adults now. We should have some level of progress forward that we are saying, you know what? That's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
That's not mine. What they think about me is truly not mine. And it's about wearing the bathing suit, or it's about going to the funeral. So I choose not to. I choose to do what's right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually even talking to my kids about it. Because she was like, we were all hanging out by the pool, and she's like, is everything okay? And she's like, what's wrong? And I just said, and she's like, no, Mom, I totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. Your relationship is in your heart, and connecting with your, remembering the good parts about your dad now. You don't need to be there. And the only thing when I said was devastating, like if I died and my kids didn't come to my funeral, it wasn't about the funeral itself. It's that what I left behind is that was not a relationship that they want to
honor.
Or they want to, you know what I mean? And not that I'm not trying to honor my dad, but...
No, but I think
you know what I mean?
I do, but in your relationship with your children, it's different.
Yes. I would not want them to feel the way I feel.
Yeah.
I want them to know, even if they didn't come to my funeral, yeah, we had a great life.
Yeah.
We had a great family.
But you had so many, even now, anything can change, right? If your children move to Australia, that's a long flight.
Yeah.
Or they move to New Zealand or to China or, Uzbekistan. Any of those places where are 12 to 14 hours by plane at minimum, your relationship changes because you don't see them every day.
Yes.
But you guys are close enough that you would still maintain a relationship versus I'm not going to pick up my phone till my kid calls me, and now your kids get children and a job and whatever, and it doesn't, the phone goes both ways, right? So you wouldn't have that relationship with your children. And again, anyone can be estranged at any time. One of your kids could marry someone that they put an estrangement in there. Anything could happen at any time. But comparing your relationship with your children to your relationship with your dad, they're different relationships.
Yes.
And
well,
one
so
is
we were
parental,
talking about
one is
being
children.
we were talking about being a pattern interrupt, which kind of is, it's how each generation moves forward.
Yes.
How Gen X's were different from the baby boomers. We had to do something to create a pattern interrupt, to create that change, for the good or bad.
Yep.
And so we were always trying to reset. So the next generation says, "Oh, I think I can do it better. I want to do it different this time."
Or I didn't like this about mine, so I'm changing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the pattern interrupt.
Yeah. And I don't think, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. What's right and wrong for you and your family is different than what's right and wrong for somebody else's family. And when you go back to that, I could see being hurt on, you posted it, and I could also see it being giving grace of, well, it's posted so you could find out, versus you could have told me. You could send the
But
same post to me.
We asked specifically, and she sent the obituary, which was just saying that, he passed away. He passed away. That was it. And then it was more to come. And then the funeral home posted the actual obituary. But there was no message about it came out. Hey, this is when the service is,
And so there's the part of me that I'm inserting myself into your story.
Yeah.
Right. Of like, oh, so I don't get a notice, a personal notice I have to find out through a funeral home. Like that would at first hurt my feelings, but then sort of validate, this is the kind of relationship we have.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't even I'm so off the radar even in death.
I've told them so many times, like, hey, come up.
Yeah.
Come stay and visit. It's just gas money. I get everything else.
Yep.
Come see my life.
Yep.
Not
Aren't
once
you
of them.
proud? Don't you want to be proud of me? Don't you want to see?
Yeah. Don't you want to see, like, just experience something different? Experience your children. Like, so we were talking about that.
And maybe part of it is I'm proud from afar.
Yeah. And maybe he doesn't, and but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't know. And there's a part of it that my sister and I were talking about. She said maybe it's because he didn't want us to see how sick he truly was.
Oh, 100%.
So it's not.
Yes, 100%. So I think.
So the best advice I would give the pool lady is guilt and shame are something that you choose to wear. You cannot stop somebody's thoughts about how they think about you. But I'm not going to stop living my life
according to what you want.
Or searching for the best version of my life, what that looks like, because of what someone else might think.
Right.
Because you know what? You actually it could go either way. Somebody could be walking by and they might actually be like, oh my God, this woman is beautiful. She's stunning in her bathing suit. Where has she been hiding? So we get to choose how we're going to look at it. I mean, I was on the phone with you the other day at the cashier, and the lady was like, excuse me. She's like, how old are you? She's like, you look amazing. I was like, well, thank you. You just made my day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would buy you flowers.
I was wondering how much we do of projecting what we think other people think of us versus what people and that's why I joke around that when you say, yeah, but you're beautiful. And I was talking to Marilyn yesterday and she's like, but you're beautiful. I'm like, you guys are my friends. You see me. And that's why I say to my friends, I wish you could see me through my eyes. If you could see yourself through my eyes, you would know what you truly look like.
We always fall into that trap. And I think even like the most beautiful person in the world, they all have their flaws. Like that's what I said to my daughter when she was getting, going through puberty and starting to become very self-conscious and self-aware. And she's like, I don't like this, and I'm so ugly, or I'm doing this. She was negative talking about herself. And I said, sweetheart, look in the mirror and find something that's beautiful. Because what you're doing right now is you're stacking all your flaws against something that you see as beautiful in somebody else. You're not looking at you.
Right.
Look at how beautiful your eyebrows are. Look at your eyelashes. Look at the curve, the little cupid's bow on your lips. Look how smooth and flawless your skin is. Look what gorgeous gray, green, blue eyes you have. Look at your long legs. I'm like, girl, if I were you,
I would never not be in shorts.
I'd have been walking everywhere in bikinis and heels. Actually, I hate bikinis and heels. Like,
yeah, I don't know how you get sand in those things, but
barefoot or flip flops. That's it. Those are my high heels.
But the minute I got out of my bathing suit, I'd be in heels.
Those are my beach heels.
Yeah.
Yes. But man, we spend so much time judging ourselves the way we think that other people might see us instead of just being who we are.
And I think of all the times and all of the people who are harder on themselves than they'd ever be on somebody else, but they don't give themselves that grace back.
Yeah.
They give the benefit of the doubt to somebody else. But they don't give the benefit of, say I had 3 children.
Yeah.
So my body is not going to look like it did at 19.
Yeah.
But
it's don't give the same compassion.
But it's functioned. I was able to, bear children, and that, like, how amazing. Because that's one of the things I think about women's body that we really don't actually appreciate enough is how amazing the human body is. You grow another human being from 2 cells.
Yes. And have the ability to feed another human body.
Right.
From your body.
Right. Like, and just that whole transformation. I remember when I was little and I saw aliens and the thing bursts out. I'm like, is this how children are born? Like, maybe I'm not going to do any of this. And I was like, no, it's close. It's not the same thing.
I do remember being a kid and asking, like, where do babies come from? How do they come out?
Yeah.
And they're like, out of your belly. And I'm like, thank God I
and then
didn't
you're
see
looking
alien.
at the belly button like,
Yes.
Then the belly button
Yes.
becomes a
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was thinking about how, and I was thinking how then there are the voices where you might be someone in a bikini and you're like, I'm fine being in a bikini, but there's someone else like, you should wear a one piece.
Yeah.
And then there is you actually have this vocalization from somebody else that you need to change something, but it should really be because you feel.
I think the reason why when people say something like that, bring you a negative comment, it's something about you that makes them feel uncomfortable. That makes them feel like they have to say something negative. I could be wrong, but
yeah. I mean, we kind of went through this with
because where else
a family member saying a certain person was a certain age and that they should now be in a one piece, especially around family. And it was like, why?
Right.
And this person specifically like looks amazing in their bikini.
Well, one of our relatives told Kayla, that her bottoms were a little bit cheeky, but you really can't find a cheeky bathing suit. But you know what? That's your belief system. That's your value system.
Yeah.
Your mother wouldn't have bought it for you if it wasn't. And it wasn't. It's just, it's not up to the navel. It's not the, 1950s and
Yes.
it's,
Cone boob top.
yes. And the high, like the long underwear, like
Yeah.
the granny panties that come right around the,
Cut up on the hip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, covers like all of your bum, but like even down on the leg a little bit.
Yes. So I had been to this woman who was sewing, and I was learning how to sew clothes, and these young girls were coming in and they were sewing bikinis, and they were taking existing bikinis and making them smaller, or they were sewing them from scratch. And all of the ladies were like, they shouldn't be in. And I'm like, when is it time to wear those?
Yeah.
Now.
Right.
18, 19, 20. That's the time, right? That you're wearing those bikinis. And then I thought, like, she's not your kid. What do you even care? And I guess that part of me that there's, if you listen to everyone else, you would never do anything ever.
Yes.
Because somebody's always got a comment
Yeah.
about something. And if you, and what is this person to you that you let every single opinion interact with the part of you that makes decisions? Who is this person to you? And I think that's where like some of the paralysis piece comes in. What will they think? What will they think? What do you like? Unless they're a trusted person who is doing something, for
Right.
your benefit.
Right.
Why do they even get in? Like how permeable our brain is to absorb stuff that.
So that's why that book, The Four Agreements, is a really good book. It's a short, quick read, but it's also about choosing what we pick up and what we put down. And it's like I told my kids, people are always going to give you advice, unsolicited or even solicited. People are going to give you advice, and people will always give you their opinions. If there's something that resonates with it, pick it up. If not, put it down. And I was like, maybe I've been in alignment with energy or just a different, in search of a higher self. Somebody's calling in.
Oh, exciting.
Let's see if we can get him on the line.
Not available. All right. You talk. I'll be right there.
But it's about making a choice. It's about making a choice to
It's
see.
the Google speak.
Oh,
Your business isn't being caught up on Google.
FCC, did they say something to me?
No. You're good.
So I think maybe what I was saying is I think maybe my body knew, was pushing towards a higher level of myself, and I didn't even understand it. Or maybe it was just advice that I needed to hear from myself, and I was saying it out loud, and
So I think, and we can talk about this in the second hour too, I think when all the noise drops away, your voice gets louder. And I think that's one of the problems with so much social media, so much bombardment and overstimulation from the noise of everyone else. It's very hard to hear your own voice.
Well, I think it's when that's
or what's
why,
good for you.
Well, I, like even with the whole guilt and shame thing about my dad's funeral, the first thing it was that's exactly what I felt. But if you can just sit still, sit in those emotions for a minute and being like, okay, then ask yourself the next best question. Why am I feeling shame? Why do I feel guilt? What's making me feel that way? And then sit in that for a minute. And what my answer was is that I would meet people that I haven't seen in years. I haven't seen some of them since I was 17. And the truth of the matter is I don't owe them anything.
Right.
My phone number has not changed. They could have called me anytime. Anytime. When I did go down and I drove down, and my sister's probably like 45 minutes away. We're at my niece's graduation, high school graduation. My sister invited all of them down for the graduation. It's a 30-minute drive. Busy. Couldn't do it. We were going to have a cookout afterwards. And even if you don't make the ceremony, you don't want to get in the crowd, let's come hang out. Nope, didn't do it. And then so how I feel is you're not in a place to tell me to criticize my life, whether I show up or I don't show up.
You've been part of my life 0%.
Right. Your opinion doesn't matter. So I can't. Yes, I don't want them to think that, but then I had to say to myself, it's not mine. I have my relationship with my dad. And since he passed away, I've just put things out into the universe. Like, I hope you're proud of me. I hope you know that I loved you. Like one of his last text messages the day before, it just, I said, I'm here for you, Daddy. I love you. And I feel I have peace because I was able to tell him.
And I do think that's a big component. I think if people are suffering or people have changed in their suffering because they're sick, I could imagine it for myself that I would say, I would want you to remember me alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I most vibrant?
Yes.
Versus on the
I want you to
downgrade.
remember the good things.
Yeah.
I would want you, and all of that is about legacy.
Yeah.
All of that. And so what I said to Chris last night after I was telling him about my conversation with my sister, and I said, I think I've always been, I know that sounds really weird and woo-woo, but if we are reincarnated or we do have multiple lives, multiple experiences of consciousness, I think I'm here because legacy picked me. Maybe that's my word for this journey. By some of the things that I've said to myself, my kids, my sister, even my mom.
This radio show?
Yes. Even my mom, way back when, she was talking about divorcing her husband with alcoholism. And I'm like, well, if you do, you've got to let go. You can't, if you choose to stay, you cannot live with resentment. Because it's toxic. And it's not serving either one of you. But if you choose to stay, then that means that you've got to choose to love him for who he is and where he is. And that's, so that's what made me think that, what, I have tried to love my dad. And I have let go of any expectations of, sometimes it would hurt when we're having a conversation and not once does he ask a question about me or my family.
I do think that's a generational thing.
Yeah.
I do think that's a generational thing. For sure.
But it's weather and it's your health and what's ailing you. And,
I say this to people all the time because I've said this to so many people across so many spectrums when they're like, oh my God, dude, the same story. My uncle always tells the same story. They don't have a lot of new stories.
Right.
New. You know,
Right.
they're 81 and they're in their house watching television.
See, I want to be 100 and still have news stories.
Right, right. But not all, like, that's why they do talk about other people. They do talk about the grandkids,
Yeah.
so, because that's their life. That's their story. That's where they are. They're not skydiving.
Right.
You know, they're not jumping the
Right.
train and going across the United States.
And
Some
a
of them
lot of
are,
times
but
they
if they're
retell
not.
the story because they want to be in the same energy.
Yes.
You know, they want to make somebody laugh and they want to share an experience, and you know how it's always fun to go down memory lane,
Yes.
especially when the great memories. And so I feel like when they do that, they want to be a part of the conversation.
Yes.
Because you see everybody sitting around and they're laughing and swapping stories, and they want to be a part of
Yeah,
it too.
you want to participate too.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were listening to Lisa and Robin on the mic on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. You can always watch, stream, and listen on WSMN.live as well as YouTube. And we're always up on Spotify. We're going to the top of the hour for news and some sponsors, and we will be back shortly. Stay tuned.
WSMN 15.